Hi there, Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. And this is Fireside Chat 158. And you will recognize or realize that this is a recording of this chat. But as is customary, I start with a prayer for peace. Gomara Shiakon ar fud na crinne. Gomara Shiakon in our jaili agus in our jirha. Ganairi lin ar cuid garmacha, gamuj buichas jiv, jeha chwivdacha, is spirit chwivdacha. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities, for peace. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into ploughshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the Holy Mountain, with thanks to John O'Donoghue. So as this is a recording, I'm going to tell you a story. And this is one of my favourite stories to tell. It's a mythic love story. Aengus Og. Aengus Og was the Celtic god of love. Everybody loved Aengus. He was so handsome, with beautiful golden curls and rich, deep hazel eyes and a smile that would melt the heart of anyone who laid eyes on him. And as I said, everybody loved Aengus, and wherever he walked, the flowers, they would just burst into bloom. And when he passed the crops in the fields, they ripen immediately. And then when he passed the cattle as they grazed, they would produce the sweetest, richest, creamiest of milk. Now, Aengus Og had a golden voice, and he would sing. And every time he sang, the birds, they would respond with a song of their own. And between them, they would create the most magical and healing of songs. And all was well in this time in the island of Ireland. And Aengus lived with his mother, Boann, the great cow goddess, she who gives her name to the River Boyne, and his father, Andaya, the good god. And they lived in Brú na Bóinne, what's known today as Newgrange. And all had been well for a long, long time, and then suddenly a strange illness befell Aengus Og. And all he could do was lie in his bed. And his parents, well, they called the healers and the herbalists and all of the land, and nobody could determine what it was that ailed him, nor could they find a remedy. And he would say, "Leave me be. All I want to do is lie in my bed and sleep." And it was as if a dark shadow covered the island of Ireland. The flowers, well, they no longer bloomed, and the crops in the fields, they withered, and the cattle no longer produced that rich, creamy milk. And the birds, well, they stopped singing. And Boann and Andaya were indeed very, very worried. Not only for the health of their own son, but for the integrity of the island of Ireland and its well-being. Still, Aengus would remain in his bed saying, "Please leave me be, leave me in peace. All I can do is sleep." And then one day, a wise druid came to visit Brú na Bóinne, and Boann said to her, "Please, can you go in and take a look at our son? Maybe you can divine what it is that ails him, and maybe you can have a remedy for him." And the wise druid went in, and she looked and saw Aengus lying in his bed. And quickly she divined what the problem was. "Ah, Joaquin," she said, "you have the look of someone suffering from unrequited love." And with that, weak and all as he was, Aengus sat up in the bed and said that's exactly it. Night after night, I sleep and I dream, and this beautiful woman appears to me with long golden hair and eyes as blue as the sky at midsummer and lips as red as yewberries. And she smiles at me, and I smile at her, and I reach out my hand to her, and she reaches out her hand to me, and just as we're about to touch, she disappears. Night after night, this woman comes to me in my dreams, and night after night she torments me by disappearing. I do not want to live without this woman in my life. I cannot live without her love. Who can she be? Have you any idea? And the wise druid said, indeed, I do not know, but I think I know somebody who might. Actually, his name is Bove Jarrag. Now, Bove Jarrag was one of the kings of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and he had his fort, his dún, in what's known today as Sliabh na Mán, the Mountain of the Women. In fact, the woman said, if there's anyone who knows the identity of this woman, it'll be Bove Jarrag. So Angus Og and the druids set off the next day in their chariot, headed off towards the dún of Bove Jarrag. And when they arrived there, they had a great welcome from him. And as was customary with the laws of hospitalities in those times, there was a great feast. And they had nua gach bí, is shan gach dí, freshest of food and the oldest of drink. And when they'd finished the eating, the feasting, then the bards came, the harpers, the storytellers, the poets, the singers. And it was only when all of the entertainment had been complete, again, in keeping with the laws of hospitality at the time, it was only then that Bove Jarrag said to the druid and to Angus Og, what brings you here to my dún? And Angus told him of the story of the woman with the long golden hair and the eyes as blue as the sky at midsummer and lips as red as yewberries, who came night after night in his dreams, and how whenever he'd reach out his hand to her, she'd reach out his hand to his, and just as they were about to touch, she'd disappear. And he said, please, can you tell me who this woman is? I cannot live without her love in my life. I do not want to go on living without her in my life. Who can she be? And Bove Jarrag said, well, I do indeed know the identity of this woman. She is Caer Iverve, Caer Yewberry. She has been put under a spell by a wicked sorcerer because she refused his attentions. She is now condemned to spend half her life as a swan and the other half in her human form. I don't care. Be she swan, be she woman, I cannot live without her in my life. I do not want to go on living without her love. Where can I find her? And Bove Jarrag said, well, she can be found at Loch an Béal Dragon, the lake of the dragon's mouth. A lake high up in the Galtee Mountains, Tipperary today, known as Loch Muskry. And he says the best time to see her is at Samhain. And it so happened it was 3 days before Samhain. And Angus says, please, please take me to her. And the next day they set off. Bove Jarrag, the wise druid, and Angus Og. And it took them 3 days to get to the foothills of the Galtee Mountains. And when they arrived, they began to walk up through a forest of oak and ash and rowans. The tree swept bare of all leaves, and all that was remaining were the bright red berries of the rowan tree. And they walked along a little path beside a stream, and they walked and they walked. Bove Jarrag on one side, the druid on the other, and Angus Og in the middle, as the two encouraged them to keep walking and walking and walking. And then they came out through the forest onto open moorland, a more desolate place you've never seen. Everything dull, brown, cold and miserable, nothing growing. No sound except the howling wind and the cry of the ravens, the gatekeepers of this place. And Angus, despite his weakness, continued to walk step by step by step along the path up through that moorland. And he was looking, constantly scanning the horizon. Maybe he could catch sight of Care. But there was nothing. And just as he was beginning to lose all hope, they rounded by a large boulder, and there before them was a Luckenbale dragon, the lake of the dragon's mouth. And Angus was able to summon up one last bit of energy, and he ran down the path, down to the sandy shore of the lake, and he sat down. And again he scanned the horizon, looking, hoping he could catch sight of his love. And the grey of the sky only matched the grey of the cold waters. Again, a miserable place. In his desperation, he called out to Care, 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 come to me, please. I cannot live without your love. I do not want to go on living without you in my life. I promise you this. I will never own you, control you, or possess you. I will accept you for who you truly are, be you swan or be your woman. But know this, I cannot survive without your love. And he waited and again he scanned the horizon, hoping to catch a sight of her. Again, this silence, just the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore. And then suddenly, across the horizon came 9 swans, flying in the air, all connected by a silver chain. And he watched as the lead swan broke away from the others and began to fly towards him. And he watched her outstretched wings as she became closer and closer and lower. And when her webbed foot touched the surface of the water, there before him was the woman who had come to him in his dreams. Care Iverver, with the long golden hair and the eyes as blue as the sky at midsummer and lips as red as yewberries. And he smiled at her and he said, Care, you've come to me. And she smiled at him. And he reached out his hand to her and she reached out her hand to him. And just as they were about to touch, she pulled away back into the sky, becoming a swan once more. And he watched in horror and disappointment as she flew off. And he called to her a second time, Care, Care, please come to me. I promise you this, I'll never own you, control you, or possess you. I will accept you for who you truly are, be you swan or be you woman. But know this, I cannot live without you in my life. I do not want to live without your love. And he watched. She flew 3 times around the lake, and then she began to come closer and closer. And he watched her outstretched wings as she flew lower and closer and closer. And as her webbed foot for the second time touched the surface of the lake, she again regained her human form. You've come to me, Care. And she smiled at him, and he smiled at her, and again he reached out his hand to her, and she reached out his hand to him. And just as they're about to touch, she pulls away and takes to the air once more. He is devastated. He is distraught. He is full of desperation. And he watches as she's flying around the lake for the 3rd time. Care, I appeal to you. Please, please come to me. I need you in my life. I promise you this, I will never own you, control you, or possess you. I will accept you for who you truly are, be you woman or be you swan. But know this, I cannot live without your love. I cannot go on living without you in my life. And he watched as she flew 3 times again around the lake and then began to fly towards him, watching her outstretched wings once more, getting closer and closer and lower. And when for the 3rd time her webbed foot touched the surface of the lake, she regained her human form. And this time she looked deeply into his eyes and he looked deeply into hers, and she smiled and he smiled at her, and it was as if they'd known each other forever and had never ever been separated. And this time she stretched out her hand to him and he stretched out his hand to her. And then she pulled him into the lake, and they both took to the air as swans and became joined by a golden chain. They flew 3 times around the lake, and then they began to sing their love song. And for 3 days and 3 nights, they flew all around the island of Ireland, singing their song of love. And all who heard this love song, they fell into the deepest of sleeps, where they dreamt of love and healing, peace, fulfillment, wholeness, calm and serenity. And at the end of the 3rd day, they flew back to Brúna Bóinne, where they're there to this very day. And I ask you, who among you does not want to be loved and accepted for who you truly are? Sin mushkil. So I hope you enjoyed that story. It's one of my favourite stories to tell. And it's an interesting story. It's a love story. It's a story of transition. It's a story of fluidity, of transformation, of acceptance, of non-possession, of actually true love. So I hope you can reflect on that story and what it might mean to you. I find it a very healing story, and a very, it's full of diversity, full of inclusion. It's quite a magical story. So I hope you enjoy that, and I say goodbye to you now. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, until we meet again for another Fireside Chat. So be well, slán go fóill.